Good afternoon, everyone. This is Christian Contreras. I want to welcome you to today's Blueforce Manual Timesheets webinar. As you know from prior webinars, we do mute everyone on these calls. So please, if there are any questions during today's session, please use the GoToWebinar question area of the control panel, and I'll be happy to address those questions at the appropriate time during our conversations today. Now, this webinar, as well as other webinars we've done, and supporting videos and documentation are all going to be available on Gateway shortly following today's session. Or you can always visit YouTube and search for Epay for ISS Facility Services and view the whole catalog of webinars we have done and all the recordings for those out there on YouTube. Now, for today's manual timesheet webinar, the topics we'll be just kind of reviewing and discussing today. We're going to start with these on the screen right now. We're going to go through and review the Blueforce payroll process to start. We're going to discuss what I'm referred to as the point of no return. We're going to go through and discuss the Blueforce user expectations, kind of what the daily task that's expected of all of our users. And then we're going to actually go in and discuss the handling of those payroll adjustments, exactly how to create that manual timesheet and how to subsequently submit and approve those manual timesheets. And as part of this whole process, I'll be doing a demo, a live demo, where I'll go into Blueforce and actually show you how to do the various functions of manual timesheets. So let's get started, and we'll get started right the first topic, which is the review of the Blueforce payroll process. So the quick brief overview, so everyone is on the same page as we start a discussion of manual timesheets. The brief overview basically starts off with an employee punching in via one of our 4 approved time collection methods. So all of our employees are going to be either clocking in and recording their time via Walter, which is our time clock, phone in, which is our toll-free phone-in service, mobile punch, which is a mobile app on the smartphone, or web punch, which is an app on the computer via the internet. Now, once the employee has punched in and recorded their punches with one of these 4 methods, a supervisor and manager, which is typically the editor and submitter roles, they're going to review the punches on a daily basis. They're going to review the punches, make sure that everyone has punched in, everyone's punched out, every employee has a paired punch. And then the manager, which is typically the submitter in this next instance, will review time for the pay week and then click on submit. And that submit is basically saying that manager has gone through, reviewed the times, there were no issues out there, and all the time basically is good to go. So from that, then the admin or possibly a different manager, whomever has that approver role, will then review the time once more and then click on approve. That approve is a second checkoff or second sign-off that's done in the field, at which point the approving is really the point of no return. We're now saying by that approval that I've looked it over a second time, payroll looks good, and corporate payroll can now take over and start begin processing my payroll. So submittal is the first kind of path. Approval is kind of the point of return. Now at this point, corporate takes over by exporting that time to JD Edwards. And from JD Edwards now, they will process the payroll, they'll cut the checks, they'll fund payroll via the pay cards, whatever it may be. At that point, the employee is getting paid. Now, as I mentioned, that point of no return. That point of no return basically refers to submitters and approvers. You have to make sure that everything is finalized and everything is correct before you actually do that submission or approval. So for our submitters and approvers, the responsibility here is to make sure that all hours are accounted for, and the responsibility also is to ensure that the employee is punching in and out on a daily basis. So from that standpoint, we need to enforce that the employees are using the system correctly. Whether it be going back down to the supervisor level, actually going out to the site and working with the employee one-on-one, we need to make sure that they are clocking in and clocking out. If they are not clocking in and clocking out, then that lends to those errors of times obviously being missed in the system. Now, once the approvers click on that approve function, the export process will begin. And it's at that point it's very difficult to kind of retract what has So once again, back to where I was left off. The point of no return is just basically that point where the approver hits approve, and it's time to process our payrolls. Now, going on from here, obviously we have some expectations from the basic Blueforce user. And the users being your editors, your submitters, and sometimes the approver, but for the most part, editors and submitters have a daily task in the system, and they should be accounting for every day. Now, this daily task that I'm referring to is simply the daily review of your punches, and of your time card specifically. Now, punch approvals and corrections should be made by 2 p.m. Central Time, with a recap that's going to be sent out to all submitters at 3 p.m. Central daily. Now, what this basically means is we have a report that sends out on a daily basis, giving you kind of an update as to where you are with your actual time versus what you've scheduled in the system. That way, you also know if there's any open punches from that report. So from that, you can really quickly tell if you need to go back and pay a little closer attention to your daily time cards. Now, clock sites, punch approvals and corrections are made on the Walter device. So what that basically means is editors and submitters can go into Blueforce and use those options if they need to within Blueforce. Or reviewers, those that have the reviewer role, and probably none of those reviewers are on this particular phone call. Reviewers are those supervisors that are at the clock sites that only have access to the clock and functions on the clock. Well, the reviewers have the option to approve punches and make corrections from the Walter device. So I would urge you, if you are not using those reviewers now to that capacity of correcting and maintaining punches at this job site, it would make your life a lot easier. And secondly, they are the ones that are right there with the employees and know what time they came in and what time they came out. Now, non-clock sites, obviously, punch approvals and corrections would have to be made directly in Blueforce. So kind of from an user expectation point, this is kind of what is expected for all our users. Now, we do stress at 2 p.m. Central Time. We do understand we have users in California, which makes it noon their time. The reason for 2 p.m. Central is because at 3 p.m. Central, we have that report that sends out. It's a standard time, straight across the board for everybody, so everyone gets that report at the same time. It's generated and sent out. And it's a good option to look at those reports if you're not doing so now, so you can actually see kind of the detail behind your jobs and kind of stay on top of what is going on a daily basis at your job sites. So one of the questions says, as a submitter, it'd be nice if I had a grace period after submitting to go back and make corrections. Well, unfortunately, once you click on submit, that's your sign off. You've told the system you can sign off. So kind of going back to what I mentioned a while ago, if you as a submitter go and submit, the approver can go back and reject your submission. So that if you have an issue as a submitter or you've accidentally submitted prematurely, you can actually go and contact your approver and have your approver reject that submission. Now, the point that I stressed just a while ago was that the approver at that point, once the approver clicks on that option, obviously the submitter already did their piece, the approver's kind of doing a second look. Once the approver has approved, at that point, that system just automatically is ready to start processing your payroll. So be very careful on the approval side. But once again, the submitters do have a small grace period there. I mean, if they need to, they just need to tell the approver to reject their timesheets. So kind of to wrap up the user expectations piece, keep in mind, if daily reviews are occurring, which as they should be, there should be no reason to have a manual timesheet being created. Now, the analogy we always make around here, if you have a biweekly pay period and missed punch happens on that first day, that Saturday, and you're here on Friday at the end of the pay period, 14 days later, trying to figure out what happened that first day of the week, good luck. The analogy we always make here is, I don't remember, someone can ask me, what did you have for lunch, last week? Last Wednesday. I could barely even remember what I did yesterday, much as what I did last Wednesday. So keep that in mind. If your daily reviews are occurring, there should be no reason to have a manual timesheet created. Now, we do understand, obviously, you don't work 7 days a week, but from a daily review perspective, when you come back to the office, come back to the job site, at that point, review the days that you were out. At that point, it'll suffice. But kind of the big picture here is don't wait till the last minute to try to figure out punches and try and match out punches, because I guarantee you will miss some time. So from your expectation, you understand that everyone should be doing some daily reviews here. The next part of this is, how do I handle payroll adjustments? So there basically is thousands of different ways that you can think of how to handle payroll adjustments. However, this is the way we need to handle it within Blueforce. So how to handle payroll adjustments. Basically, all adjustments have to be handled in Blueforce using the manual timesheet process. That is the process that I'm going to be going through here shortly during this webinar. Once again, all payroll adjustments have to go through the manual timesheet. In other words, this includes any interim checks, basically the situations in which very all too common, where we have unpaid hours, hours that we didn't pay our employees. Now, these situations are all handled separately away from your regular timesheet. So one thing I'll show you here momentarily is, in Blueforce, you have a place to do your regular timesheets, and you have a place to do unpaid hours from previous periods in a manual timesheet format. Now, you have the ability to enter up to 2 prior periods in the manual timesheet piece. If you need to go further back, say 2 months, 3 months, 4 months back, for whatever reason, at that point, that would require additional assistance from corporate payroll. You won't be able to do that in Blueforce. But keep in mind, manual timesheets is the avenue we're all going to take to do payroll adjustments. So this also means you don't pick up the phone, you don't call your payroll processor and have them, or email them something so then they can do it manually. It has to be through the manual timesheet. So how do I handle this particular scenario? Well, if it's the current pay period, you're still in the current period, and payroll has not yet been approved, so keep that in mind, approvers, you have not approved payroll yet. If the current pay period has not yet been approved, then there is no need to create a manual timesheet for any hours that reflect the dates within the open period. So what it basically means is, the example is the current pay period right now is January 2nd through January the 8th. If that was my active period right now, and the employee needs to be paid 16 vacation hours for time that was due on the 4th and 5th of January, then all you're going to do is go into the current pay period, the regular timesheet for the current period, and include those 16 hours of vacation. Once again, there is no need to go and do a special manual timesheet for that scenario. You can go into the current period and make that adjustment. Now, on the flip side of this, if the pay period or prior period has already been approved, meaning it's already been sent off to JDE, JDE at that point has taken that time and Blueforce has already taken that time and exported to JDE, and the employee's been paid. The key thing here is, if the payroll has already been approved, then at that point you must create a manual timesheet for any hours that reflect the dates within that closed period. So, for example, if the closed period was January 2nd through the 8th, and here we set on the period of the 9th through the 16th, what you're going to need to do is now go create a manual timesheet for those employees, that employee that needs that 16 vacation hours due on January 4th and 5th. And then keep in mind, this is the only way an employee can get paid those hours due. We have to go through the manual timesheet route. Keep in mind, keep Blueforce as a bigger picture here. We want apples to apples. We want to make sure that everything is in one system. If we're putting in hours in one system and not accounting for them in the other, we're going to have a problem down the road come audit time. So keep in mind, we have to pay those payroll adjustments in Blueforce. through the manual timesheet. Now, one thing I will stress to everyone on this phone call, everyone here who at one point had JDE security, some way, shape, form, obviously everyone's security was adjusted several months back, so you don't have access to no longer do direct time entry. Time entry has totally been restricted, and obviously the only way to make payroll adjustments, I know I can sound like a record here, but all too often we have the same issue occur every week, several times. We have to create a manual timesheet. This is the way to do this. And I'll just stress once the last time, do not contact your payroll contact here at corporate to ask them to import that or key in those missed hours. The correct way is to do it via the manual timesheet. Now, for those that joined in late, just a quick reminder, this webinar is being recorded, and all supporting videos and documentation for other topics and other webinars we've done are all available on Gateway. But more importantly, if you want to see this recorded session or any of the webinars we've done in the past, you're more than welcome to go out to YouTube, search for Epay for ISS Facility Services, and you can watch this, like I said, watch this webinar or any other webinars we've done in the past. So let's go right into creating a manual timesheet. Now we all have a basis of kind of on the same page of our daily reviews. We all know what to do or what is expected from a editor submitter role on a daily review. And obviously we all are aware of the need to create a manual timesheet. So going in, kind of segueing in now to creating that manual timesheet. Now as we go through this, you're going to find, for those that have not done this before, it's not a difficult process of doing it. It's just, I'm not saying the word tricky, but the link for the manual timesheet is in a separate place in Blueforce within the timesheet area. So that kind of leads to kind of trying to locate that. So part of my screenshots here are going to show that for you. So as I go through, we're going to talk through the process first, then I'm going to go through and demo how to create that manual timesheet. So kind of going through here first, the first thing I want to point out is, like I mentioned, your job timesheets and your manual timesheets. Here on this screenshot, the job timesheet link is going to provide you the kind of the information for your regular current pay period timesheets. So when I go into job timesheets and I go in and just click on that link, it's going to give me a similar screen here on the right hand side where you can actually see your current or basically any of your regular timesheets that have been processed or current or in previous periods. So job timesheets always shows you the timesheets that have gone through for all technical purposes normally. Now the blue link down here, the blue arrow is pointing to the manual timesheet link. And the manual timesheet link is where you're going to actually see all of your manual entries. So that basically saying is that's where you're going to go in and see any time, or more importantly, that's where you're going to go and enter time that was missed on a prior period's prior pay period for an employee. So I've got a few questions here. Let me go ahead and just go through, and I'll just address them for the whole group. So one of the first questions I have here is, would submitting a manual timesheet be used to enter retro pay as well? So yeah, the answer is yes. You're going to actually, all back pay or any missed pay period, it's going to be going through that manual timesheet. So basically, retro is the same as back pay. One of the things I will point out is that we do have some rate types in the system that we have made available only for manual timesheet purposes. So you may go through and see that some are available in the manual timesheet, some are only available on the regular timesheet. So we have a functionality there that we can kind of segregate and decipher between the two, which ones are used in what scenario. Another question, what if the approver rejects the timesheet after approving the timesheet so I can adjust? Not sure if I understand that question, but I think the way to go with this is the approver always must reject and reopen the timesheet for you to make any adjustments. So one of the things to kind of keep in mind here is when a approver says to the submitter that there's an issue, or maybe the submitter itself has asked for that timesheet to be reopened. It's a two-step process. So the approver goes in, rejects the timesheet, And then in the second step, goes in and clicks on reopen to reopen that timesheet. So it's a kind of a two-step process to make that happen. So it's very hard for, I guess the concern is if something's going to be missed there, it's very hard to miss it. It's going to be there wide open in open status. And then the last question I have here says, how would bonuses be handled? So basically, bonuses are handled through corporate payroll and not through Blueforce. So commissions and bonuses are always handled through corporate payroll. They'll actually enter those for us since they're not actually something that we actually would do in Blueforce. So all good questions. Thanks for all those questions. All right, so kind of looking back here on our screenshot here. So you have the job timesheets, which like I said are the regular timesheets, and then your manuals where you're actually going to go and make your corrections or your corrections, but pay the employee their missed time. So kind of the step-by-step process of how to go into here. So once you click on that manual timesheet link, the first thing you're going to do is you have the ability now to select the job. So what you're going to do is go in, select the job, then you're going to go enter the date range for those missed hours to be entered. So keep in mind, we are doing this because we're essentially telling the system we kind of want to match up that pay periods and get the hours entered into back and reflected to the proper pay period that we missed. So we go in here, put the right dates, and then we're going to go in and check that little box that says Show Blank Timesheets. Now let me stress, Show Blank Timesheets is important here because if you go to the screen and just do a search straight off the bat, just click on search, what's going to happen is you're going to pull up nothing. Show Blank Timesheets basically shows you a listing of all the timesheets that are available for you to be entered for. Since they have no time, the system does not waste its time and show you those timesheets on the screen. You have to physically go in there and say Show Blank Timesheets and then click on Search. And once you've clicked on Search, the system's going to return a similar window here where you're going to be able to see all of the manual timesheets that are available in that job date range combination. So in the screen right now, you'll notice there are two different periods showing on my screenshot. But if you look at the very top of the screen where you actually put in the date range, and let me do everyone a quick favor here. Let me go ahead and circle this date here. So this is a little date section. If I tell the system I want to see all the available blank timesheets between the 2nd and the 8th of January, the system's going to show me anything that hits this particular range. So although the first one ends on the 2nd, it is within that range. So you will actually see that you have a larger, you have a bigger area to cover, I guess you can say, because of that. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. All you're going to have to do is be vigilant that you pick the right timesheet to enter time for. So in this case, notice that the one in the red is probably the one I actually wanted to work with. I can then click on that particular timesheet and continue on. But the key here is to keep in mind, once you go to the screen, verify that you have the correct timesheet that you will need, and then just click on the job link to select it. Now, one of the examples I will show you here in a little bit, when I do this live demo, I'm going to actually pull the same screen up, but I'm going to actually have multiple pay group names showing on my screen here. So if I ever have different pay group names, now this is my test pay group, so don't worry about that, but let's say I'm in Dallas, and Dallas actually has, has a pay group called N-102-US-W, I think is the name of that pay group. Well, if I go in here and notice that I have a second pay group that really is not my pay group, then might want you to kind of maybe put a little light bulb click on in your head, because if you see a pay group there listed that it's not something that you normally would work with, chances are that one of your employees is coded to the wrong pay group. The system will only show you any pay groups that are right now possibly being in use with this job as well. So just keep that in mind. If you ever see some pay group on the screen on any of the windows in Blueforce that's not one that you would normally work with, keep that in mind, because it could just give you a little upfront hint that one of your employees is not in the right pay group. Which kind of lends back to the issue that the employee probably wasn't set up correctly in JDA was to start with, but that's for another webinar, another time. I'll show you all those corrections. Now, on this manual timesheet, once again, once I've gone through and actually clicked on the job link. In this case, I'll click on the job link where the arrow is pointed. System is going to give me the opportunity now to click Add New to now add a new line. Now, since they are blank timesheets, the system does not have anything populated for you. You now have to manually go in there and click Add New to automatically give the option to start entering into that manual timesheet. Now, when you enter into the manual timesheet, it's very simple. 6 little quick areas here that you want to focus on. First is going to be the work date. The work date meaning what is the day that the employee missed. So what day did we miss hours for? So in this case, I put the 29th. Now keep in mind, if your day here is outside of this range of the pay period that's corresponding to that timesheet you're entering for, the system is going to get a little upset and give you a nice little message letting you know that it can't save your work, it can't do it for you. So keep in mind that the dates have to be within the same range. Next, pick the job you want to work with. That's number 2. Number 3, you're going to pick the employee that you want to work with. And we hit the little drop down here. The drop down is actually going to provide you a list of all the employees that can work that particular job. Now keep in mind, if that job that you're trying to work with, that employee doesn't have that job under his or her working jobs, you're going to run into a little roadblock. So keep in mind that only the employees that are available to work, in this case, the job in the top left-hand corner, and I'll erase my drawings here. So right now I'm using this example here, 105-Alamo Cafe. If my employees are not set to work that job, then I cannot code them, obviously, to that job in the manual timesheet. So just keep that in mind in the back of your head. Number 4, the task. Pick the task on the drop-down that they worked. Once again, the tasks that are associated to the job will all be the only ones that will be available for you. And then lastly, or not lastly yet, but work order, the next one. If there's a work order assigned to this particular time that was missed, you can still code it to that work order. Work orders become a big thing because some of us around the country use the information out of Blueforce from a billing standpoint, so we want to know labor was coded correctly to the right work order. And then lastly, you have this field on this screen called past pay date. Now, the rule of thumb here, make this just simply the start date of the pay period for the hours you missed. It's kind of a hard thing to describe, but it's just basically another verification point. So if I go here and put the same date, the start date, which is 27, 27 matches my pay period up here. Just put that in the past pay date field, and that should suffice. Now, as I go through here, there are 3 more fields I want to go through real quick, and I have some questions I'll answer. Manual timesheets. Continue on. There's 3 more fields that you'll have to focus on, and these are really the heart of the matter. What's the employee going to get paid? So the first thing is the rate type. We tell the system what rate type is available. Keep in mind the rate types that are showing on here when you hit the drop down are going to be the ones that are available for this job and essentially this pay group. Hours, you put in the number of hours. There is no entering an in and out punch here. It's simply from a manual time sheet standpoint. You know, on Tuesday, the 2nd of February, we missed 6 hours for the employee. So we're going to go in here and put the date of the 2nd of February. Going to put in 6 hours for the employee in step number 8 here. And then lastly, step 9, which is the pay rate. We're going to leave this blank. Now, we need to leave this blank because this actually goes to the employee profile and pulls down the employee's rate. Now, many of you that are submitters on this phone call don't even have access to the rate, so you may not even have to see this. However, the approvers that are on this phone call, many of you do have access to the rate, so please don't put in anything right here because the system will automatically pull that from the employee profile. However, if the employee did work a different job that actually paid them more, maybe they paid, for ease of math, I'm going to use, say they're a $10 an hour employee, but they did a job that paid them $15 an hour, then at that point you can go in and put in 15 here, and whatever rate you put in this field is going to supersede what's in the system. So just keep that kind of as a mental note. All right, so I have a question, I guess, says, what about shift pay? So when one of us have shift differential pay and stuff of that nature, shift differentials don't automatically get figured in with a manual timesheet. A manual timesheet is truly a dumb entry screen where you're just going to go in there and tell it what exactly you needed to pay. It will figure the hours times the rate, but that's as much math as it really does for anybody. So if you're concerned about shift differentials that were not paid, and hopefully that's where we're going with this question. If a shift differential is not paid, I would ask you to go ahead and calculate that manually first. So let's say we owe the employee $3.75 is what we ultimately owe this employee. At that point, in this particular screen, you do have a field called Other Pay, to which you can just go in here and key in the $3.75, and that would suffice for covering that manual timesheet back. There would be essentially no hours or rate for that scenario. It'll just be Other Pay that you would enter for that scenario. So once again, shift differentials don't get figured out with past time. You have to actually figure that out on your own. If you also, from that standpoint, if you want to put a comment there, you're more than welcome to put in a comment just to actually make a reference just to what exactly you did. Just to make a reference that it was for a shift differential pay, it was for a specific special scenario. Some other questions here. How are termination requests on the current pay period handled? Not sure how to answer that one. There's so many. Maybe I want to interpret this correctly. Yeah. So essentially, what's going to happen here in that standpoint is that the termination request, you would term the employee like you normally would. Just keep in mind that an employee cannot get paid out of Blueforce, which essentially is going to be over to JDE. Bottom line, an employee cannot get paid out of the system if they are already terminated before the check is cut. So one of the things I will stress to everyone is make sure that employee, if it's a termination situation, make sure a termination occurs after the payroll is run. Now, I do understand that sometimes we need to pay the employee maybe in advance because they're going to get termed or some of that nature. In that case, you still can't term it on the system because then the system won't allow us to print a check or generate that information for you. One thing I did miss, going back to that shift pay question, another question came in right behind that is, do we need to make a line for each day? It would be best to go ahead and correlate the day to the actual differential, or more bottom line, I guess, correlate the day to the missed pay. So yeah, so when you're actually doing this manual timesheet view, make sure you put a date and then put in the other pay. It probably make it easier and kind of to CYA, kind of they say, just to make sure that everything is in check. We did pay them for this day on and this amount. Alrighty. And I have a question here about FMLA hours. Right now, we don't do anything FMLA in our system. If you're doing something from an employee standpoint, I can follow up with you after this call. I'm pretty sure that's something that you'd want to handle with your corporate contact. So we don't really have a FMLA rate type or anything like that. I mean, the closest we have is sick leave, but I don't think that's what you'd want to use in this scenario. All right. So after you go through, there's 9 little areas that you may want to look at. Once you go through and look at those 9 areas, you're going to come down and click on Save. And then once you hit Save, you're always going to get a confirmation message letting you know that the manual timesheet was added successfully. So if you do not get this message, then you did not hit Save, or more importantly, your work did not get saved. So keep in mind that when you hit Save, you must see this little confirmation message to make sure that everything was done correctly. So at this point, I'm going to stop stop talking here. I'm going to go into Blueforce. I'm actually going to now log into Blueforce. I'm going to show you how to create that first step of a manual timesheet. So what I'm going to do is, the manual timesheets, as I showed you a little while ago on the screenshot, are all located under the timesheets icon at the top of your screen. Now, if I'm in Blueforce, I can go through the top of the screen there. Or more importantly, if I don't want to go that route, I can always click on Home. And when I click on home, there is a icon right in the middle of the screen called Timesheets that will take me to where I need to go. So one of the questions I've gotten on prior calls, I just want to bring it up on this call, is there any place from a manual timesheet to key in the actual in and out punch? And the answer is no. The timesheet is truly just a timesheet where you tell it whole hours, 6.5 hours, 7 hours, 10 hours. You're just entering hours into the system. If you want to record maybe an in and out punch associated to that whole hours, you can use a comment field for that. But we don't have something called manual time cards. I think that was the question, where someone go in there and actually do something from a time card standpoint. Everything from a manual timesheet is strictly total hours. Okay, so let's move through here. So when I go in here, I'm going to go and click on Timesheets. Once again, as I showed on the screenshot, on the left-hand side of the screen, I have two things I want to pay attention to. Obviously, first, I want to pay attention to the links. Notice the screen that comes up automatically is your job link, your job timesheets link. So that's what's actually showing right now in your screen when you go straight to timesheets. What you're going to want to do is you're actually going to want to use manual timesheet at the bottom of the list. Now, when I click on manual timesheet, what that's going to do for me now, that gives me the ability now to enter a manual entry for any of the jobs and the associated employee or employees that work that job. Now, the way this works is obviously you do have some selection criteria on the left-hand side of your screen. So these 6 jobs that you have currently selected, those 6 jobs are basically what you have access to seeing as a submitter. Now, some of us on this phone call may have access to 1 job. Some of us may have access to 150 jobs. Bottom line is whatever jobs are shown there on the left-hand side are what you are able to work with right now. So, for example, if my job is number 5020001, and I wanted to enter a manual timesheet for that job, if I don't see it on that list, I can't enter it for that job. So what you can actually do at that point, if you're missing a job, you don't see it on here, you can go back to your selection criteria, first off hit clear, and then come over here and select the jobs that you want to actually work with. And the system will provide you the job screen where you can actually go and pick those other jobs and go from there. But keep in mind, this next step, what we're doing is only going to be focused on the jobs we have currently selected. Now, with that, I'm going to move on. I'm going to go in here and show you that first step was to go in here and select a job. Okay, so I can go in here if I wanted to select a specific job, or I can say all jobs. The major difference is if I go into and follow this process through and go over here and click on Show Blank Timesheets, and he'll tell the system to search. If I leave it all selected jobs, it's going to pull up every job timesheet that's available for every job that I have selected. So that lends to extra noise on the screen for you. So what I would urge everyone to do at this point is simply pick the job you want to work with. So in this case, I want to say it's the Waterburger job that I have. At this point, I don't have to worry about employee and timesheet status just yet. But I tell the system what date range I want to go and enter a manual timesheet for. So I'm going to go back to the 6th of February to the 12th of February. Then I'm coming here and check Show Blank Timesheets. If I don't do that and hit search, the screen's not going to change because there is no timesheet right now populated with any time whatsoever, and no manual timesheets populated already for that job, for that date range. So I have to go and click on Show Blank Timesheets, hit search, and voila, there are all the timesheets that you can enter for within that date range. Now, notice I am using some test examples here, so that is why I have a lot of clutter on my screen right now. But essentially, the date I entered of the 6th to the 12th matches the pay periods that appeared for me. Now, don't fret for anyone on the phone call. Don't worry about my dates. The dates are actually going to be off a little bit. My test examples don't operate on a Sunday through Friday like all of our regular jobs do. So that's why I have a lot of extra items. But I do want to make sure everyone's paying attention, kind of focused on this piece I'm about to say, because like I mentioned earlier, you may have a couple that have multiple pay groups showing on here. And what that is telling you is that you have employees that have different pay groups that have accessibility to this particular job. So what that basically means is I may have an employee that I'm working with that works all the time the same job, and we never had an issue. But if you look here, you'll notice that there are 3 different pay groups that are in play. So that means that there's 2 employees out there have the wrong pay group. So just keep that in mind. If you ever see something like this, it may want to make you wonder what's going on. And the easy way you can figure this out is kind of into how I'm going to go into my next step here. So let me go ahead and clear my screen. And we're going to look at the dates here. We're going to use that first one, the 131 pay period through 2/6 as being the pay period that I need to enter time for. So when I actually click on that job link to actually go into it, one of the things you can keep in mind here is if I hit the drop down on my employee screen at the top, only one employee appears, and that might be fine, but that's telling me that Edward belongs to this particular pay group and can work that job. Okay, so if I go back real fast, and let's pick the other one here. It says the N001 USB1, the last line on available for me. If I hit the drop down on employees, notice I have a different employee there. It's Jane Doe. What that is telling me now is Jane Doe has the wrong pay group. So if you ever see something like this, whether it be in this manual timesheet view or in the regular timesheet view, don't just keep working with it. Stop. Let's take a break, take a breather, and put a help desk ticket in. Let us know that so we can help you correct that, because chances are the first thing we're going to tell you is go back to J.D. Edwards, check the pay group there, because I guarantee you that pay group is wrong in J.D. Edwards. The information in Blueforce is all starts in J.D. Edwards, and so if something's set up incorrectly from day one, it's going to be incorrect in Blueforce as well. So I'm going to go back to the prior example. So I'm going to actually use Edward as my employee. So from this particular example, I can now go down and click on Add New because I'm already in the manual timesheet. I'm just going to come right here and click on Add New. And when I click on Add New, that's going to give me the ability now to key in information into the grid. So as a validation point, I have to put a valid work date. So say the work date that we're dealing with here is let's do February the 2nd. Oh, sorry. So remember, February 2nd has to be within that date range. So I can either key it in if I want to, or I can just type it in. Whatever seems to be easier or works better for you. I can actually type it in, or I can hit the drop down and hit the little calendar icon like I just did a little while ago. Next thing is a job. All the system is doing here is validating that the job that you selected here matches the one you selected earlier. That's all it's doing there. That's why it repeats itself. Next is the employee drop down. At this point, I can pick the employee. Oops, sorry about that. All right, so next I'm going to pick the employee just to basically choose the one I need. In this case, there's only one. It's easy for me to pick, but make sure you pick the right employees. Once again, stress if you pick one, looking for an employee that's not available on here. Either A, he's got the wrong pay group, or B, he doesn't have this 102-Waterburger job as his working job or one of his working jobs. Task, you pick the task you worked. Work order, if there is a work order, it'll be available on the drop-down list. Once again, the work order has to be active right now for you to be able to assign it to it as well. And then the past pay date field, I would just, like I said, just put the start of the period you're dealing with. As I scroll over, the next three are going to be very simple. Rate type, I'm going to say it's regular rate. Hours, let's say we missed 8 hours of pay for him. And then whatever the rate would be. Now, like I said, leave it blank. The system automatically pulls it in unless you know for a fact he worked at a higher rate and you need to pay it accordingly. Now, one of the questions that always comes up here is, well, you know, this guy took a lunch. So is the system going to figure out lunch rules for me? The answer is no. This is truly a dumb entry screen. It's not going to do anything. The only thing it'll do for you is figure hours times rate. Other than that, you're on your own. So if he did take a lunch and he really only worked 7.5 hours, then you have to make sure you reflect in this field 7.5. So once I reflect 7.5 hours there, like I said, the rate would automatically populate for us in a little bit. If you have a scenario with a shift differential or a flat amount that you just need to pay the employee and that doesn't relate around hours, then don't use hours and rate. Just go straight to other pay and key it in there. And then, like I said, comment. You can put whatever you want as a comment. The comment comes over, but it's not really used for much. But you can actually put a little note there if you want to reference that the 7.5 was for missed pay, which should be a kind of misnomer. Everyone should know what you're doing a manual timesheet because you missed some pay. But if you make a note there, it could be missed pay or missed shift differential, whatever it may be. So you have the ability there. Now, the save is actually located way at the beginning of the line. So kind of, I would say that Blueforce purposely did that so you could actually go and look at your line again one more time as you came back to the left. But nevertheless, once you're done there, you're going to come back to the screen. You're going to click on Save. So all I'm going to do at this point, come back in here, click on Save. And then the system at the very top of the screen is going to give you that little confirmation message letting you know that manual timesheet entry was added successfully. Now, one thing I'll stress to everyone, if you do hit save and you actually get kicked out of here or you actually kick yourself out of here, don't panic. As long as you got that message, it's all saved and it's all good. So let's do this. Let me go back out here. And once again, here you can actually click on Add New again if you need to. And let me do that real fast. If I need to add another line, make sure, obviously, for example, I can only add it for Edward. Can't add it for anybody else. But if I need to go in here and add a new line, I can go in here and put in, say, 02, 03, 16. I can go here, put Edward again. Go here, put custodian. Same thing as before. And then go back and just put in, maybe it's a different rate type. Maybe he's vacation pay, whatever it may be. But I can go through here and put in hours and whatnot. Now, one of the questions that I got just now is just kind of seeing kind of from a glance is can we put a negative deduction here, or do we have to go through corporate? Yeah, unfortunately, the manual timesheet is specifically looking for positive numbers. Right now, if I go in here and put a -3 here, it's hard for you to see this, but I'm hitting negative, and I can't put a -3 or any of those little characters. So, yeah, in cases where you have to take away money from somebody, that's always an issue you have to kind of step around with, make sure you do it right. Go through corporate so they can actually do it. Obviously, you have to have positive hours to take away hours, so just keep that in mind as well. Now, one thing I'll point out, when I hit save a little while ago, I'm still working on this line, but when I hit save on the previous line, you notice here that the rate automatically filled in. This guy only gets paid $5 an hour. That is correct based on my test example, but the rate automatically does populate, and you'll notice that the amount also gets figured for you. So I can continue on, finish my line here once I'm done, hit save again, and then you can actually proceed on with the next step in the manual timesheet process. Okay, so both of them are saved. Right now, you notice here that he's going to do 3 hours one day, 7.5 hours the other day, 15 on one day, total pay, and $37.50 the other day. So all this is looking good and ready to go. So that's how you enter a manual timesheet. Nothing more, nothing less. It's a very simple process of doing the manual timesheet. The tricky part might be the next part, where you actually now submit, and I'll ultimately approve that timesheet. So I'm going to actually go back, and one thing I'll bring up, it's not part of my presentation here, but I want to bring it up because I think it might have some use for some of you. You do have an option up here to export to Excel. If you ever need to export this spreadsheet out, you have the ability to export to Excel, and you have it. If you ever need to save it locally, you want to share it with the rest of your team, whatever it may be, you have that information in the system. All right, so I'm going to back out here, and I'm actually going to go back to, let me go back up one more screen. Actually, I'm going to go back to the home screen. I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to go back to my slides and just go through a couple other pieces here. So the question is now is, once I've entered this manual timesheet, what am I supposed to do next? Well, first off, you're going to make sure that the manual timesheet gets submitted and approved. So that's what we're going to do here next. And then we're going to have to go through here and be sure you contact your corporate payroll contact, make sure they know that there's a manual timesheet out there in queue as well. One of the things that makes this tricky for everybody is that the manual timesheets, and like I said earlier, the manual and the regular timesheets are in two separate buckets or two separate queues. There's two separate areas. So it helps if you notify your corporate payroll contact, you know who they are, and just send them an email letting them know that you have a manual timesheet out there ready to be processed. Now, send via email the special pay check request form as well to your payroll contact. So let's go focus on the first bullet there that's bulleted. Let's make sure that we manually, we submit and approve the manual timesheet. So as we did before, there's two ways of doing this. Some of you feel comfortable doing it the way of going to the timesheet view, which I'm going to show you. That's kind of the standard way that most of us do it. But you can also go through the payroll area of the Blueforce program or application. So under payroll, same thing works there. You have a payroll summary and a manual payroll summary screen. The manual payroll summary is where you're actually going to go to do this submissions and approvals. Now, once again, I'm going to show you this on the screen here how to do it the payroll route, but I will also backtrack here a little bit and demo the way of doing it on the regular timesheet as well. Same thing as before. You're going to go through here, and one of the things with the payroll summary route, if you go that route, it seems to be a little bit more helpful to you because it actually gives all the information right here on the one screen. So you can actually go through here on this the screen. You'll notice that you have a kind of an update. Once you put a date range in there, it's actually going to pull up all of the manual timesheets that are in an open status, submitted status, needs changes, or approved status. So it's going to tell you that kind of on the screen without having you to go and only see one status at a time. So it kind of gives you a big overview of what's happening. Now the way you do this is you basically pick the pay period that you need to approve, submit first, for your manual timesheets, and you hit the drop down where you actually go and hit select action. In this case, you hit submit all. Now once you do this, the approver is going to have to kind of go back in the same process, same way, and notice the approvers option in the screenshot shows that you have one submitted. All they're going to do now is hit that drop down and notice that their options are different. They have the ability to approve all or reject the submitted entry. Once again, once you do these in this little area, it's only going to affect the manual timesheet. So once again, I'll stress that one more time. The manual timesheets are in a separate area from your regular open timesheets you use on a day-to-day basis. And then obviously, like I mentioned, we mentioned earlier, is when you reject something as an approver, the next option is to reopen all. So you have to go in here and make sure you reopen it in order for the submitter to be able to have access to that timesheet. So let's do this. Let me go ahead and stop here. Now I'm actually going to show you. I'll show you this if you like, but more importantly, I'm going to show you the other way of going in and approving, submitting and approving those timesheets. Now I'm logged in right now as a submitter, so everything I've done so far is as a submitter role. The only major difference between a submitter and an approver when it comes to this process is that submission and approval step. So the terminology is a little different and the options there are different. Other than that, everything is the same. So I'm going to go back into timesheets. And when I go back into timesheets, I'm going to click on the left-hand column. I'm going to go to manual timesheet. When I go back into manual timesheet, notice right now it's basically left. It's almost frozen in time from when I left this a few minutes ago. So one of the things that's different here is you have the ability on this screen to tell the system the status you want to view of your timesheets. Very similar to the payroll summary screen that I quickly showed you here a while ago in screenshots. When I hit the drop down here on timesheet status, this is going to give me the ability here now to see the different statuses that are available for my timesheets. Okay, so these are my open, submitted, approved, needs changes, and then you have wait, export, which you're not going to need to worry about, but that's a good key indicator to know if it's been sent over to JD Edwards or not. And I'll explain that a little bit. Now, when you're actually looking for timesheets here, you already have time filled in on one of the timesheets. the show blank timesheets is probably not important anymore because now you can only focus on that one timesheet that has time. And all I did now is, like I said, I unchecked show blank timesheets. So at this point, if I want to see just my, well, first off, if I wanted to open up my timesheet that I already created, that's sitting in here, my manual timesheet, I can click on it and go right into that particular timesheet. And you'll notice on the left-hand side here that I have some actions that I can actually do. Now, one of the actions here that I can do here is I can tell the system I want to submit. Before I can submit, I have to go and select the lines of time that I want to actually submit. So this might be the way that many of you will want to be able to submit, because from this view, you actually have visibility to the timesheet that you just created as well. So you can also glance over to the right and say, yeah, I entered 7.5 hours, yeah, I entered 3 hours, or more importantly, wait a minute, that 8 hours, that 3 hours should have been 8 hours. I don't know what I was thinking. So if that's the case, you can always click on Edit as well. And Edit on the far left-hand side will give you the ability here now to go in, correct any hours on that particular line of time. So kind of the way you look at it is each day, each line here is for its own day of the week. So kind of what the question was asked a while ago is, should I make my changes on a daily basis? Well, yeah, you should always reflect the day the time was missed and how many hours correspond to that particular day. Now, when I click on Edit, I have the ability now to come in here. If I need to go and change anything at this point, I can hit the drop downs on any of these fields and kind of make the changes as well. It's taking forever to update. I apologize. There it goes. So on 2.3, I can go in there and say, instead of 3 hours, I can go and change it to 8 hours. Come back, hit Save at the very front of the line again, and it'll give me that confirmation message again at the very top of the screen, letting me know that my entry was updated successfully. That is the key thing. Make sure you always get that message. Now, once I'm ready to submit, all I'm going to do is go in here and click on the lines that I want to actually submit for. There is a kind of select all option up here, and that is the first little blank checkbox up here on the header row. If I check that, it automatically checks all of the entries underneath it. So just keep that in mind as well. That's an option that is available. So let me do that here. And then after I click those particular boxes, last thing I'm going to do is click on Submit. So now when I click on Submit, I am good to go. And the system, it's going to tell me at the very top of the screen, and don't panic when you see this, it's going to tell you that the records have updated successfully, but it could not find any recipient for notification. Uh-oh, what happened now? Well, what basically happens at that point is that the system is looking to notify whomever the approver is, but the approver that's assigned to this particular job doesn't have doesn't have the alert checked off on his or her employee profile, or more importantly, that approver doesn't have an email address in the system. So that's what it's telling you. The system couldn't find any recipient for notification, so it's not going to notify anybody. Perfectly fine. Just tell your approver, go over there and check. I just did a manual timesheet. Can you go in there and approve it for me? That's all you really need to do. If the approver wants this enabled for them, they just need to contact the help desk, and Tiana and I will jump in and go in there and set up that approver appropriately with that alert function. But I bring that up as well because that happens a lot on the regular timesheet as well. Now, once you see that in there, you can always come back in here and hit search again like I just did, but notice that I don't see anything pop up on my screen. And that is because your status right now is only showing open. If I need to, I can always change my statuses around. I can say all statuses, hit search, and you'll notice here in the middle of the screen that everything is submitted. Now off here on the left-hand side of the word submitted, there is nothing. There's a little blank space. There's nothing there, and I'll just circle this little section. This little area here that I'm referring to normally would have options to select the row of time. It also has the options there to submit. It has options there to add new and do all that good stuff. Well, since I am just a submitter, it's telling me I'm pretty much done. I can't do any other functions here. But when an approver logs in here for this job, they're going to go in there and be able to select those particular lines and actually click on Approve to be able to approve these entries for you. So this is where I'm going to stop. I'm not actually going to go through and approve because I don't. I'm logged in as a submitter right now. But as an approver, I would have some options there to be able to continue this process. So this is a real easy way to submit, and obviously the same way you come in here to approve your manual timesheets. Now, as I mentioned, once they are approved, keep in mind is once they are approved, you need to now be sure that you contact the payroll contact here at corporate. Let them know that you have a manual timesheet in queue. And once again, also let them know that if there's any special paycheck request forms, you need to send those to them as well via email. So kind of going through this, one last thing as a recap as we wrap up our session today. Just keep in mind that if there are no daily reviews are occurring, there should be no reason to have a manual timesheet created. And I'll stress that, I can't stress that enough. Make sure we're doing those daily reviews. Daily reviews also are important are part of our normal audits that we're doing as far as Blueforce goes. So if we're not doing a daily review, kind of every office will probably get a very low score from the audit perspective. So keep that in mind as well. We also want to utilize Blueforce's functionality to help with shift differentials, holiday exceptions, and etc. to prevent from having to track info manually. And I stress that if you have shift differentials on your jobs, please put in a help desk ticket, ask for some assistance from either myself or Tiandra, and we'll be happy to go in and look at those shift differentials and set them up in Blueforce. This is something you should not be doing manually. Same thing with holiday exceptions. We have a function in there that says, for example, let's say the next holiday is Memorial Day. And on Memorial Day, anybody who works my job needs to be automatically be coded to holiday worked, OT, which is basically pays time and a half. What we can do, we as Tiandra and I can go in there and set up an exception on your job that says when anyone clocks in on this particular day, whether it be a holiday or whether it be any day of the week that you deem needed, needed for, going to prevent us. Well, it's not going to say prevent, but it's going to lead to one less thing we as approvers, submitters, editors, having to go back in the system and correct rate types on those special days in question. So there's a lot of things like that. If there's something that's keeping you, I don't say keeping you up at night, but something that's causing delay in your payroll, reach out to us, please, and let us know how we can, maybe we have a suggestion of how we can handle it in Blueforce. Now, just as a reminder, everyone, I've today, so it'll be posted. I'm engaged. Search for Epay for ISS Facility Services to watch this and other recorded webinars we've done in the past. Kind of with that, I want to say thank you for everyone for joining us today. I hope this manual timesheet webinar was beneficial for everyone. Be sure to visit us on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. Central, where we have a tips and changes webinar. Every week we do this, twice a week. Each session is different. So each session that week is the same, but each week is a different topic. So please check your weekly Epay update for upcoming webinar information. And with that, I just want to say thank you. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday, and we'll see you again soon on another webinar.